Brad, we are back a little later this week because your Rammies were on Monday Night Football. And I know the game didn't turn out the way that you wanted.
Yeah,
but
it was awful.
But at the very least, these games are competitive, I would say.
You know what? My wife walked in and she had kind of been around the house, and she walked in, the clock was counting down, and then it was final score is 19-16. She goes, "Hey, at least it was close." And I go, "No, it really wasn't. It was bad. Really one of the most poorly coached games from McVay that I've seen since their loss in the Super Bowl to the Patriots."
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was the Bengals have one of the worst run defenses. He abandoned the run about 3 minutes into the game. Kyron Williams only got 10 rush attempts the entire game, and it was a close game. They could have dominated on the ground and played off of that to the pass. And we had a backup left tackle who had to come in, and they didn't give him any help, and he's awful. And so, yeah, it was just ugly. But, growing pains when you got a young team. So
I didn't see it. How did Puka play?
He played pretty well. I mean, they kind of kept him in check. Tutu Atwell had a lot of catches, and Tyler Higbee, the tight end, had a lot of catches. But they kind of kept Puka in check for a while, and then he had a big catch at the end of the game that got them a touchdown. But again, they scored 7 points with 1:04 left in the game, and then had to get an onside kick to even get a try at a field goal. So that's how it really wasn't even that close. It
Okay.
was
like, I just saw the score, and
it was.
I did see an article because what I do, because I do a Fortniners podcast and I want to read up on the teams during the week, is on The Athletic. You can subscribe to teams. So I'm always subscribed to the Rams. So I get to, even in my notification, stuff on the Rams comes through, and I saw, kind of what you said, which is just offense was horrendous.
No, it was bad. Just the play calling was just bad. Honestly, even though they're a young team, they could have gone in there and won that game. I think if he would have stuck with a running game plan and just kind of rammed it down their throats, because the defense was playing really well. Joe Burrow's got the hurt calf. He couldn't really move around a whole lot. So Aaron Donald was snacking on him most of the game, but yeah, it happens. It happens. It's frustrating to watch Sean McVay get in his own head sometimes. He's like, "I'm going to come out. We're the best passing offensive team in the NFL right now, so we're going to come out and just do that." And I think you kind of got to read the room and say these are the Bengals, and we can run against them. But again, I'm sitting here. He's over there with the job. So what do I know?
Yes. Well, in today's sports, if you are not necessarily a dynasty, sometimes you got to pay the piper for winning a title.
For sure.
Kind of works that way sometimes. Yeah. All right. So what are we going to talk about here? Obviously, sort of the ending to a disappointing Giants season. I saw Logan Webb after last night's game where he goes complete game, win 2-1 win. And he just said, "I'm just tired of losing." And I thought about it, and I was like, he's tired of losing, but just 2 years ago, they won 107 games, right? And how long has he even been on the roster to where losing has become a big part? Like, I would imagine, I don't remember when he came up in before 2021. But at least for the last 3 seasons, the Giants have been 500 or better. But it does. The reason why I kind of sympathize with him is because it does feel like they've just been losing. Yeah. And they're only 1 game under 500. But this was what we were talking about last week. I think you specifically said it. 81-81 is just as bad. It's almost like nothing happened. Like we just, we have the same season as last year. And last year we thought was a bit of a failure. So I just found Logan Webb's comment interesting about that because, they beat a team in San Diego Padres who they are still a couple of games ahead of. And we were talking about maybe the Padres could actually come back and catch us. And, they still have 2 games left, but I don't think that they can actually make the playoffs either. So I think the Padres are actually eliminated. And the Giants are just hanging on the hair of their chinny chin here. I think if they go undefeated, and then if most of the other teams lose their games, they have a chance. But probably not going to happen at this point.
No, and I know Logan's a team player, and I know he's talking about the team. But honestly, when I read that quote at first, and I'm tired of losing, I thought, yeah, I'm tired of them not scoring runs for you either, man. I mean, you're 11 and 13, and you got these fantastic outlying pitching numbers, and I mean, ERA is good. It's not phenomenal, but again, for this day and age, that we're back to kind of the live ball era. So I mean, he's got what, a 3 something ERA, so that's good enough to get you like 15 wins on most teams.
Yeah,
15, 16 wins maybe. But so I thought at first when I read that quote, I go, oh, he's tired of not getting run support. But I got, nah, he's not that type of guy. He's talking about the team. But then I thought too, 500 last year, close to 500 this year, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, 107 wins. So yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought, not losing that much, you're losing as much as you're winning, but overall, since you've been on the club, you've won more games than you've lost. But tired of not making the playoffs, I think, is probably what he was closer to.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's what it was all about. Yeah. The Giants have been in the news a little bit nationally.
Everybody hates us.
Well, Tom Verducci, I guess Sports Illustrated is still a thing, even though their website is terrible. But because we have Apple News, we get the SI articles in our Apple News feed. And he wrote an article, and I just wanted to read a little bit from this article because it was basically a lot of the things that you and I talk about, though I felt that there was more of a negative slant to it. And maybe at this point, we're supposed to be a little bit more negative than we generally are, but that's just not kind of how we do things. So I'm going to read you this little paragraph here and give me your thoughts on it. So Verducci writes, my problem with the Giants, and he must have a personal problem with the Giants, the way that he wrote that. He must be just as frustrated as we are. My problem with the Giants, especially if they cap this season with a playoff berth, now that is not going to happen. He wrote this about a week and a half ago, is how other teams might copy their gig economy approach to baseball. It is not fan-friendly, truncated starts by pitchers, an ever-changing lineup with role players and no stars, a 16-person coaching staff, the worst team speed of any contender. The Giants are a well-managed success more than they are an aesthetic one. What are your thoughts about that?
I don't know. Rest assured, Tom Verducci, you don't have to worry about us making the playoffs at this point. And so then I guess at that point you have to not worry about people copying us and what it is we do. But Zaidi came out and I totally understand his point. And it's funny too, because I don't like the stance nowadays in 2023 that if you don't agree with this person, I mean, there's a line. It's like you're either this or you're either that. I'm so I'm so unblack and white. I'm so gray. It's ridiculous. Look at this. I'm gray. I'm even gray up here. I'm so gray that I can look at a team and I can say, well, I see the good points and I see the bad points, and I can give a team time and I can give a regime time. So I just because I like what Zaidi had to say in response to that doesn't mean I'm a Zaidi apologist. There are some things about the way he does things that I don't like. But for him to say, look, this was the necessity. This is what we had to do. Stripling, Manea, and I'm trying to remember who else it was that they were kind of bashing on. Stripling, Manea, and somebody else just weren't pitching up to snuff at the beginning of the season. So they had to kind of work other pitchers in there, and they had the luxury of having like an 8-man rotation. How much did we joke about that before the season started, that we have like an 8-man rotation? So you can bring in guys like Tristan back and Keaton Wynn, and you can bring those guys. What's that?
Junis,
Sean, you aren't ready for this jelly. Yeah. So nobody's
he's been up and down, man. Yeah. That guy should never, he should just live at a hotel.
Yeah, exactly. And so I pretty much look at that and say, yeah, I get it. I mean, they had to do what they had to do at the beginning of the season. Now you see a little bit more of a rotation. Here we are at the end of the season. You're starting to see, Logan Webb Alex Cobb when he was healthy. Now he's gone for the rest of the season. But Sean Manaea threw 7 innings the other day. He's kind of worked back up. So if
that was his biggest game of the season, right?
It was, and he pitched really well, and he has pitched really well at the last, couple months of the season. But if you look at that going into next season, and then you look at Tristan Beck and you look at Keaton Winn, and you say, well, I mean, we've got Webb, Beck. If they can, I think, is Cobb still under contract for next season? I can't remember, but I haven't seen his names when they're talking about rotation predictions for next year. But if you go Webb, Harrison, Wynn, and Beck, then you're starting to build yourself a rotation.
Cobb is a club. So the Giants can pick up his option.
So they will
for 2024.
I'm sure they will. And so that's another man.
He needs a bargain at $10 million.
Yeah, exactly. And so and there's always a chance they redo that deal and say, hey, let's do another 2-year deal, and let's up you to 12. Maybe.
The flip is if they don't, they would have to buy him out for $2 million. That would be the.
Okay, and so that's a $8 million difference. I mean, you're getting Alex Cobb for $8 million basically, so you might as well just hang on to him. Although we thought the same with Longoria last year, but it was a different situation. Longoria was 79 years old, so it's a little.
Yeah, Alex Cobb didn't have a clock counting down to when he was gonna be at the end of his deal.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and I think Evan Longoria has been pretty decent for the Diamondbacks this season.
No pressure either for him.
No pressure at all. I mean, he's just out there having a good time. And that's where a lot of Major League Baseball players kind of go to ride off into the sunset because they already live there, because they're doing spring training down in Arizona. They already have a house there, and they're like, well, I might as well just live here year round. It's always 108 degrees every day, right? And then it cools down to 105 at night. But yeah, so I get where Verducci was coming from. But I think that was a situation this year. The Giants just kind of had to live by it. And I like the fact that the team can adapt, because you look at the flip side and you say, what if they didn't adapt? What if they just kept throwing these guys out there every game, kept pushing them to 6 and 7 innings to see what they can do? This could possibly be a 90-95 loss team. Mm-hmm. If you push the narrative of let's stick with this 5-man rotation, this is what we gave them money to do. No, you have conversations with these guys. You say, look, this is what we have to do. Alex Wood, he was one of the other ones. But we have to say, look, you're going to have to come in the second, third inning. You're going to have to give us 4 innings, and then we'll get you out of there. If we start you, then we start getting in this weird bullpen situation. But we have other guys like Brebbia and Ryan Walker and Jacob Junis who can go 2 innings, and then we can get you bridged to Tyler Taylor and then Doval and in that situation. So, but to now have, looking at next year, a possible 5-man rotation that Zadie and Kapler are kind of hitting on in the press right now, that I think we might have a rotation. Even Kapler said this is the first time we might have an actual rotation since I've been here next season. So you can look at Ryan Walker, kind of push him towards the back end of the bullpen, Jacob Junis back into the bullpen, Brebbia back into the bullpen. Now you start looking at this beefy back end of the bullpen.
Okay, but did you buy that comment as we won't do this? Because I look at Harrison, Keaton Winn, both really young pitchers that you're not just going to be able to throw them out there for 6 and 7 innings. You're going to have to really manage them at a micro level because of the fact that they're young. And so when I heard that statement, I said, well, that's good PR for people to get off their back, because that's going to be the big question that they're going to get asked in the offseason. But I'm not sure that I completely bought it. I sort of feel like we're going to see a lot of the similarities. Now, obviously, injuries are going to be a part of it. We won't know about that. But Beck, also a young guy, I'm not sure that they're going to be able to resist, or that they will be able to, it's not like you're rolling out, Glavine and Smoltz and Maddox and Steve Avery. Like, if you can roll out those guys, then you can just tell the bullpen, you only got to worry about 1 day a week, man. But Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, finish your thought. Sorry.
No, I sort of felt like there was a strategy to that statement, being that I know that you guys are going to ask us about this, and here's my answer before we even get to the offseason.
Yeah, and I get that, and I think I look at it as a twofold. Yes, I kind of bought it because I think you want to start telling Tristan Beck and Keaton Wynn, get ready, get yourself going, stretch yourself out in the offseason, working at the fact that there's a good possibility you can be part of the rotation. Is it going to be a 5-man rotation? We're the San Francisco Giants. We have Farhan Zaidi. It's probably going to be a 6-man rotation. It's probably going to be a 7-man rotation.
Yeah.
It's probably going to get stretched out, and that's fine. But if you have 6 or 7 guys that you know you can get to the 6th or 7th inning, like a Sean Manaea, if Manaea opts in, that's another piece of the puzzle. I'm not expecting Stripling to opt in only because I know he's had a rough season. And I think he'll be making 15 million next year. I think it was like 10 and then 15 or something like that, or 11 and 14. It was kind of lopsided. It wasn't the 12 and 12 or 12 and a half and 12 and a half to equal 25. But I think if he opts out, it's going to be because of some comments that he made just about a month ago that he wasn't happy with.
Right.
Is he the one who made the comments about the Phantom IL, or was that Wood?
That was Stripling.
I think that was Stripling. And he basically said, like, I don't like being in limbo. I don't like being in a situation. I think I'm strong enough. I can, help the team right now, get me in there. I want to start. I want to be a starter. So I think he'll probably opt out. I think Manaea might stay because Manaea kind of has found a second life in the second half of the season. He may want to build on that. He's young enough. He could have another season with the Giants. Again, great ballpark. He pitched well the second half of the season. If he can now be a starter, so I bought it for that. Maybe I'm a sucker. Maybe I'm maybe I'm what the Jonas Brothers write about. I'm the sucker. but not only that, but I also look at it as maybe it's Farhan getting out there that, hey, these are our starters. By the way, Atlanta Braves or Cincinnati Reds, you guys have a player over there. We've got a starting pitcher that we'd like to sell you. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, maybe it was a label put on just for trade purposes to, kind of get the names out there.
So I would say that the way that you and I try and look at things is definitely in the optimistic sense. I think part of it is sometimes we don't I would like to feel that we're not talking to robot Gabe, like that we're talking to like real human with human feelings Gabe, because sometimes
is there one?
I mean, he just comes across so robotic. And I saw Susan Slusser, she had posted a comment that Gabe had made, which is very normal Gabe, very political statement covering both sides, so that no one can really question it. And somebody who I follow on Twitter replied like negatively towards his comment. And Susan Slusser was like, the guy can't win for losing. Like it's just, exactly. With this fan base right now. So I get that part. And I think it's normal for fans to kind of, have their eyebrows raised a little bit at what this regime says. And the reason, I'd say here's the main reason. In the offseason, and we talked about this all offseason long, Giants need to get more athletic. Giants need to get faster. The stolen base is back. The Giants need to improve defensively. Those are the things that we said have to happen. Farhan Zaidi, same thing. He said, we got to get faster. We got to improve athletic. And after thinking about that, were we sold a bill of goods? Because that did not happen. They are worse from the stolen base perspective than they were last year, right? Their team speed is putrid for a game that got faster for everybody. You look at the teams and the players, who's going to dominate these MVP conversations? It's Mr. 40-60, or is that how many stolen bases Acuna has? Does he have?
Yeah, he's got 68. So he's just 2 away from 40-70. I mean, he just phenomenal season.
I don't. Do the Giants have a guy who has 15 stolen bases. I think I'm going to guess Tyro is tops for the team.
I believe Tyro has 20. I
Okay.
can take a quick look, but yeah, I believe Tyro is above 20, maybe. But he got there early. It's been a while since he's stolen more bases.
So if a fan is like, well, I'm just not buying what they're putting down until I see it, I completely understand that, because I think we were very patient last year when all these conversations were happening and they did not get it done. And, you could say, well, they tried to get some of the bigger players, and Judge would have worked out and Correa probably wouldn't have. And they were in on those guys, but ultimately, again, you come up second. And so thus, what is your focus if you don't get those guys? Well, now you struck out. We go back to finding other people's problems who we turn into a bit of a benefit to us. So there were a couple bags. Andrew Baggerly was just on fire this week.
Yeah, he was having a good time on Twitter today.
He wrote about Logan Webb. He wrote, this was during the week, last week. He wrote, the Giants should count themselves lucky to have Webb the pitcher. They might count themselves even luckier to have Webb the professional, and not merely because he hasn't kvetched about the lack of runs. There's a whole lot more that Webb has every right to be steamed about. He's the only player in the 5-year Farhan Zaidi regime as team president of baseball ops to receive more than a 3-year commitment. He is more invested in the future of this franchise than any other player. He has watched the roster churn around him. He has looked at the lineup card and seen players like Jock Peterson. And we'll get more. We'll talk a little bit more on Jock in a bit. And Yermin Mercedes playing left field behind him. He's watched the front office do next to nothing to bolster the lineup or rotation at the trade deadline, instead leveraging Kyle Harrison for 3 starts of 90-plus pitches when he hadn't thrown that many since last year for Low A San Jose. He pitched in a rotation that used tandem starters and openers and frustrated veterans like Stripling and Alex Wood, and the Giants only had the option of trying their scheme because Webb continued to perform as the ultimate bulk pitcher without complaint, loading up innings on his 26-year-old shoulder. So that paragraph. Now, I'm trying to figure out Baggerly, not his source of or reason, but he's somebody who has watched things happen in the clubhouse, and he's sort of been able to observe, and he's got a perspective, and he's got an opinion about how things are going in this Gabe Kapler era. In another article, he said Kapler lets the players basically police themselves, and that was not in a positive. It was sort of in a negative. So I sat back and I tried to think about, is this coming directly from Logan? Is this Baggerly's perspective on Logan? I'm going to guess that, it's probably not exactly verbiage from Logan, but I think Baggerly probably talks to people who know Logan, or talks to teammates who are close to Logan. And Logan did sign that contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
He did get re-upped. The Giants bought all of his arbitration years. So he is with this team for a long time. And now he is kind of the point person on the team. In previous iterations of this team, it may have been Buster Posey, it may have been Brandon Crawford, to a lesser extent, Brandon Belt. All of those guys are going to be gone. Crawford's going to be gone. So he is going to be the vet of this team and the one with the voice. And I just wonder, what can he do? What can he say to basically point to everything that Bags just wrote to go, okay, that thing right there that we tried to do, it didn't work. Let's try a different way. Let's figure out a different way, because we need to get faster, better defensively, all of those things, right? And yeah, I just really wonder if the organization takes something like that and goes, yeah, we need to kind of change it up, or they just go, you know what? Trust the process. This is going to work. And, 1 out of 7 times this is going to work. And we're coming up on time number 7, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think you and I have watched so many sports over the years, just so many different sports, along with baseball, football, basketball, hockey, soccer, everything. And I think what we realize is that the best coaches are the ones that can adapt to their roster. You're not always going to have every player that you want. If you're, if you coach basketball and you're a 3-point shooting team, you're going to try to gather those 3-point shooters, but then you're going to kind of lack somewhere else.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of the way it is with the Giants. They want to gather the guys that can get on base. That's, good eye, hit the ball hard, put the ball in play, don't strike out as much as most other players, but you're going to miss something somewhere. And a lot of times it's going to be speed, or that's going to be defense. So you're going to put those players on the field. So I think if the Giants had those players that were fast, that were good base stealers, then I think we would see a philosophy shift.
Mm-hmm.
They would kind of go with that situation. I don't think, obviously it's not that we're not running because, that's not what we do. I mean, look at the stats.
You're just not like jocks on first. Okay.
No,
green light.
Let's steal a bag.
He's stealing. But, he could probably do a couple of delayed steals where the catcher's like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and look at our numbers. I mean, Thairo Estrada, 22 stolen bases this season.
Who's
the
second?
Next guy behind him is Michael Conforto and Blake Sable with 4.
Oh my God.
There's a gigantic gap. Then after that, you got Brandon Crawford and Bryce Johnson, who's not even around anymore. And those guys have stolen 3 bases each. One of them is 125 years old, and the other one just isn't on the roster anymore.
Even played 20 games for the Giants.
Exactly. But here's the other issue. Neither one of them are hitting or have hit this season over 200. So they're just not getting on base. Luis Matos in 73 games, 3 stolen bases, but that only translates to maybe 7 or 8 stolen bases over the course of a full season.
Yeah.
Casey Schmidt, 2 stolen bases, but again, only hitting 202. So you got to get on base. So their situation, I mean, it's just nothing has gelled into a situation this season where we said like, man, we need to run more. Yeah. You know what? You got to get on base and you got to get on base with base stealers before you can think to run. You're not running with Wilmer Flores, who is getting on base. Thairo Estrada is the only guy who's going to run it. He only got 22 stolen bases. He was hurt a bit of the season. Lamont Wade Jr., not a fast guy, but he gets on base.
Yeah.
But again, you're not going to send him. You're not even going to send him in motion and try to do some hit and runs. That's just not part of baseball anymore. And I know a lot of people say, well, just do it. But if you got a guy throwing 98, 99 miles an hour and you try to go hit and run, what are the chances you're going to put that ball in play?
The one thing the Giants do very well is swing and miss at high fastballs. That's what would be that would be the strategy against it. Okay, so here's a question: the Giants, the regime, the front office is very analytical heavy. I'm sure they have all these modules of things about why they do what they do. Now, if you are lacking what you just said, and they could not find the speed, or their model said, well, we could add this speed, but it would actually hurt more in these other categories where we believe this is actually more valuable to us. Could they be outsmarting themselves on some of this stuff? Because if the idea is, well, when those teams zig, we're going to zag because we can actually win on the margins in this thing that some of these other teams can't do as well as us. I just wonder if at the end of the day, you go talent for talent and you line up Dodgers and Giants. And we'll talk about this because I think Friday's game is the example of it's the season in a nutshell was Friday's game in LA. You line up those guys, and I watched Sunday's game, and I saw like 6 hitters come through the order for the Dodgers. And I went, he would be the best hitter on the Giants. He would be the best hitter on the Giants. And like all 6 of them, right?
Absolutely.
Like a JD Martinez who's just hanging out because nobody wants him and the Dodgers get him and he has 30 jacks. Like at some point, it's just got to be about talent. And now the Giants may not have the right timeliness of this because a lot of their younger players are kind of coming up now. And maybe it was like this year just wasn't the crest, and maybe it's going to be next year or the year after where these young guys finally turn into good players and you can match them up talent-wise. Because we know, I mean, you watch Luciano, we figured that one out. Someone correct us. Luciano,
we were told.
You watch that guy and you go, okay, if you didn't know anything about baseball, you know to keep your eye on that dude. Every time he hits the ball, it's hit hard. Every time he throws the ball, he's throwing it 100 miles an hour. So there are guys like him and Matos who you go, okay, from a talent standpoint, in 2 or 3 years, those guys are going to be able to level up and match some of these guys that the Dodgers have. But Michael Conforto, Mitch Haniger, Brandon Crawford, Casey Schmidt, J.D. Davis, the best version of those guys, when those guys are hot, maybe they can match the other team. But their medium game, their normal game, we're losing that position battle every single time. And that is what is frustrating, because I watch that game and I go, man, every single position player on this field, you would rather have the Dodgers guy.
Yeah, absolutely. But the Dodgers built this team over the years. They built it from the inside out. Then they went outside and brought in some players that would completely not just round them out, but put them over the top, and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. So the Giants have to make a splash like that. I keep hearing the name Juan Soto thrown around. I keep hearing Pete Alonso thrown around, but you will have to trade some of these young guys.
Yeah.
And by some of these young guys, it might even have to be Kyle Harrison. I mean,
it might have to be all of the young guys.
It might have to be Kyle Harrison, Casey Schmidt, Luis Mato. I mean, you might have to throw all these guys in there. Patrick Bailey's probably untouchable because trying to get a catcher is very, very difficult. Franchise catcher. Giants just went through that. They had Buster Posey, and then you had, hey, let's try to figure out what we can do. And then when Buster Posey was hurt in 2011, and when Buster Posey was, took the year off for the COVID year, those two situations, you're looking at it going, yeah, Buster Posey. I mean, he was, obviously, we knew he was the franchise guy, but looking at it, we thought it's really hard to get. So Patrick Bailey's going to stick around. But yeah, this is going to have to be a look in the mirror off season for Zadie and Kapler. And they're going to have to say, look, are we going to just go out and get a piece or two and trade some of this farm system that we've built up? Are we going to philosophy shift? Are we going to say, look, we need to get somebody who can get on base and steal bases? Because when you're looking in AAA too, and you look at the stolen bases numbers and the speed numbers, this is not a franchise-wide philosophy to have base stealers and guys who are going to get on base and run up and down, run all over the bases. I mean, when you're looking at minor league numbers, you're looking at your stolen base leaders, Tyler Fitzgerald with 29 in 102 games. Is he going to be up next year? I don't know. I mean, he's an infielder. He could play a little bit of outfield. I know Kapler said they want Luis Matos. They were blunt about it. They said, we want Luis Matos to be a better outfielder. He's okay in left and right, but he is not good in center field, and we need him to be good in all three outfield positions. Bryce Johnson, again, not around, 18 stolen bases. After that, you don't have anybody over 10 stolen bases on the season.
Yeah, McRae and Von Brown had down years.
Yeah.
Those guys would have probably been on those lists, but they did not.
Yeah. So when you're looking at it, this has to be a season where you decide, do we want to continue to go with this philosophy? Because if you do, I could see them reaching out to Jock Peterson again and saying, hey, you want to stick around for another year? I don't think he does. I think he's looking to move on and go play. He's near the end of his career. He wants to latch back on with Atlanta or the New York Yankees or somebody and hit for them. I say the New York Yankees, they're not going to make the playoffs either. But, Judge has been hurt most of the season. Pitching has been, off and on.
Rodon, that's the one so far that we did not make a mistake on.
No, we did not make a mistake there. Pretty much Gossman. Gossman was the guy. And if we could have gotten, possibly Judge, Correa, that looks like that was kind of a bullet dodge. Again, Judge, we talked about this in the offseason. He's such a big dude with that big body. He's going to break down. He's going to have, situations where he gets
Plus,
hurt.
we have Bryce Eldridge, the new Aaron Judge.
Absolutely.
Banging home runs.
That's right. We don't need anything else. So yeah, it's going to have to be, I would be happy if the Giants said, hey, we're making a little bit of a philosophy change. We're going to try to run on the bases a little bit more, get things moving, get some team speed in the outfield, get some team speed on the infield, be a little bit quicker. Mitch Haniger, Michael Conforto, Jock Peterson, these are guys that are on the slower end of the spectrum, and they grab them thinking, hey, these guys are just going to hit bombs. But when you look at their OPS numbers, when you look at their slugging numbers and their home runs, it was just a disappointing down year all around. And again, does that fall on hitting philosophy up and down the organization? Is that something that needs to change? Because I don't think philosophies like that are going to change. You don't put this much money, this much time, these many years into a philosophy like what they're doing with hitting and pitching and everything else, and then all of a sudden go, yeah, let's switch that up a little bit. Let's change. Again, we're not going to know what the hitting philosophy is because they're not going to tell you, obviously. Then you know how to pitch to that hitting philosophy. But from the inside out, would you even think that's something they would look at changing? I mean, maybe making some tweaks here and there. What they've been doing is trying to find guys who fit that philosophy instead of, like back in the day where it was like, hey, Barry Bonds is a masher. He hits home runs and he steals bases. Let's get him and let him just do his thing. It's really not like that anymore, and especially in the Giants organization.
So there's another article by Bags that I want to quickly mention and get your thoughts on. This is the first time that I've seen anything about the clubhouse come out. And he wrote, outfielder Mike Yastrzemski, second baseman Tyro Estrada, and infielder Wilmer Flores are among those who sought to refocus a clubhouse that has included too many ho-hum reactions to losing, along with a near zealotry to a Filipino card game. I'm not going to pronounce it because I'll screw it up. That Jock Peterson and some other Giants players, and why does Jock get named and other Giants players not get named? That's interesting. Appear to find more compelling than studying the night's opposing starting pitcher. That is, and look, Bags is not going to write that in an irresponsible way, right? That is coming from somebody who knows something or something. Maybe he's seen it, but that is more than likely coming from somebody on this team who is frustrated with Jock's lack of attention to detail. I would assume. So but that's the first time we've heard about it. Now he also mentioned that the Kapler polices, wants players to police themselves, and that hasn't worked out. And some people wish that wasn't the way that they handled business. There's one voice in this organization. His name is Buster Posey. Buster Posey was like the controller of the locker room. He was the leader. He was the guy who was in that locker room who, he probably just had to bat his eyes at somebody and they sort of knew like, oh, okay, probably shouldn't be doing that. So that comment was very much pointed at Jock. We have had our issues with Jock just because he is terrible defensively and he hasn't had a good season offensively. Though at the same time, we never thought that he wasn't trying or that he wasn't working, that he wasn't doing his job. It was just sort of what we saw in the field. So this kind of gives you a different thought process about what might be going on with Jock. And I do wonder, is he uninspired because the team is not good? Is he frustrated because the Giants tagged him instead of allowing him to be a free agent? And so he can, they paid him a lot of money. It was going to be more money per year.
He could have said no. That's, so he obviously believed in what was going on.
Right. So yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting that Jock was the one who's kind of got the finger pointed at him.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's some like AJ Pierzynski stuff right there. Right?
Yeah.
Who I can't remember who the pitcher was that we had. Used to also pitch for the Reds, but anyways, he wanted to go over he wanted to go over hitters, and AJ Przinsky was busy playing chess or checkers or something like that, from what I remember. Old story, true or false, I don't know.
AJ's probably the most hated player when it comes to the fan base in the last 20 years.
Yeah, him, the battery of AJ Przinsky and Armando Benitez. Those are the two.
Hunter Strickland is very high on that list.
Yeah, he had some moments, though.
Sam Coonrod is probably pretty high on that list.
Sam Coonrod's high on the list, but we hardly even knew him. Yeah. He was kind of like in and out, but yeah, that's a tough one. I just sent you a little something that popped up from some Ann Killian writing today as well.
Ann's going for next on this one.
Oh man, I don't know if you've read it yet, but it basically says in an article she wrote, Webb says big changes need to be made. In comments to the Chronicle's Susan Slusser, one player said the front office's inaction at the trade deadline showed a lack of confidence in the team. One player told Slusser that Kapler couldn't lose a clubhouse that he never had, before quickly backing off the comment as too strong. So that was via Ann Killian's writing. But, again, Kapler has always seemed to me, not necessarily as like the top manager in the league, kind of more like another elevated player, almost like a player manager. He's in there pulling the strings, making the moves, but he's very hands off. He's just kind of lets and it came out in an article today that he kind of lets the players police themselves. They kind of take care of their own business. He's not an old school guy like Bruce Bochy, who's 30, 40 years older than the current players. Kapler's only 10 years or so older than these guys, so it's more of like a camaraderie. Hey guys, we're just trying to win. I'm gonna make the moves out here, but you guys may not like it, and that's just kind of the way it is. So can you really be on board with a guy like that who's kind of more your equal? So that might be an issue going forward, but possibly not as Kapler gets older. But again, how much longer is he going to be around with the Giants?
I mean, I think the idea when they brought him on was for him to be the Giants version of Dave Roberts, right? Dave Roberts is not going to get a lot of credit because he's not putting together that roster, but he's also not going to get a lot of blame because the dude's like, remember the old discussion about him just opening up a binder and turning to the correct page, and that's how he would base his decision. And that's, I think, what they wanted Kapler to become. But when you win 107 games, you get some of the credit. And then, when the next 2 seasons, you kind of fall back to the average, you kind of wonder, like, okay, was 2001 just the outlier, and 2022 and 2023 is kind of more what the roster is. Now, I mentioned this Friday's game, and we'll wrap up this part of the conversation. I didn't expect it to go this long, but this is the end of the season. We can
we got a lot to say.
Yeah, we can talk about the frustration, but Friday's game, Giants are competing. They are playing decent baseball for the first 5 or 6 innings. Mike Yastrzemski forgets how many outs there are in at that point. Was it like 1-1 or 2-1? It was a close game. Forgot the outs. The runner on third tagged up and scored, and he was trying to run the ball into the infield. John Miller on his play-by-play on the radio kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt. He was like, he didn't think the runner was going to run. So I was like, I don't think so. Maybe that's how John saw it as it was.
Yeah.
There was another moment. I don't remember if this was the same game or if this was one of the other games in the series. Ball's hit out in front of Yastrzemski, and it just skips by him to the fence. And it's like,
I think that was Sunday.
Mike Yastrzemski is not the reason why the Giants are not playing good baseball. You do not count on Mike Yastrzemski to be one of your 2 or 3 best players on the team. Mike Yastrzemski is like a fantastic 4th outfielder for a very good baseball team. He would be a fan favorite on a good baseball team because he would do all of the things that you need him to do as a guy who plays 1 out of every three games, 2 out of every 3 games. But here they count on him to do so much because they don't have a lot of consistent quality ball players. So there was another moment in this game where I want to say Haniger was in left, Chris Taylor was at second, and they hit a semi-deep fly ball to Haniger. I don't know if he didn't think Taylor was going to tag up and try and get to third, but Taylor tags up, gets to third, that the Giants don't throw him out. And that was just like another comparison. And you're like, nobody on the Giants, except for maybe Tyro, could do that. Nobody would test the outfielder's arm because they just don't have any team speed. And at the same time, defensively, if you're a good defensive player, you want that guy to tag up because you want to show off your hose to throw that guy out. And that's just not how the Giants don't seem to have very many players like that who are just like, I wish you would, right?
Yeah.
Like, go for it. I want you to do, like, they're just like, we're just here to play baseball. There's 162 games. If you roll out the ball and you do these calculations, we'll win 81 of them. And if we're better than the margins on this, then maybe we'll win 87. Like, that's kind of how the Giants look on the field. So with the exception of that Bulldog that they had on the mound yesterday, he seems to be a little bit different from that kind of mentality. But in the end, the Dodgers make like 2 plays that really stand out that the Giants cannot make. And then when you do that, then you're like, okay, let's play the last 3 innings. And Luke Jackson's like, I'm going to bounce this one in the dirt. I'm going to bounce this one in the dirt. And by the time the game is over, you look at the scoreboard and you're like, how did this game get to be 7-2? We were in this thing the whole time. And that is just the difference between those 2 teams. It is 1 or 2 plays on the field where the aggressiveness and the talent just overrides the Giants. They can't do anything. And then you're in a deficit, and now trying to play catch up with the Dodgers is just almost impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a lot of those games lately. I've noticed, like you said too, it'll be like, hey, we're only down 3-2 going to the 7th inning, and then we lose 9-2.
And wow. The other game this just last week was that game in Arizona where Wilmer, he makes a swipe tag and the ball flies out of his glove and he's got to run. He's like, run? This is baseball. Run. I don't want to run after this ball. And Corbin Carroll just takes third and takes home. And it's like, oh, that's how you can steal a run. And the Giants don't do that at all. So,
and those are gritty baseball players. And I hate to even say it because I know these guys work their tails off, man, but we don't have the gritty baseball instinct guys. We're not going to call up an Ellie Dela Cruz from the minor leagues because we don't have them. We're scouting guy. We're not scouting those guys so much. The dirt bags, the guys who have been around the diamond and just going crazy and diving and all this fun stuff.
Meckler, they hope that Meckler turns into a version of that, right?
Yeah, we're hoping Spexler gets to be that guy. Yeah. We're scouting the guys that walk more than they strike out. That's kind of what we're doing.
All right, real quickly, you're not you have to prepare. You're being a very responsible human being tonight. So you're drinking tea. I'll tell you what I did. I went to Trader Joe's because every time I go to Chipotle, there's a Trader Joe's right there, and sometimes I put my order for Chipotle. And I go, I got 5 minutes. Let me stop in at Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's now has an old-fashioned mix, kind of like the one that I got from Bullet and some of these other ones. So I grabbed that. And then we always talk about the Kentucky Best bourbon that we use as the mixer. Well, they had another Sour Mash bourbon, same price. I don't know if it's the same brand or not, but I was like, oh, I don't have this one. I have the other one. Let me pick up this one. And so very inexpensive purchase there. And so I had some of the old fashioned tonight. Obviously a little carbier than I'm used to, but if I have, one a week, I'm generally okay. But the other thing, and this is kind of a trick because you sent me an app that makes sure that we are being responsible with our intake.
Yes.
And so what I how I've gamed this app a little bit is I have the old fashioned, which counts as the one, and then I make sure the ice kind of goes down a little bit, it gets a little watery. You still have a little bit of the mix. Then I put a little sour mash in there, and you still have a little bit of
There you
the
go.
old fashioned flavor in there. And I make sure I stay under the amount there, and I can
Under
keep
your
it there.
2.0
Yes,
units. Yeah,
under my
that's what
units.
I like to pour. Like, I'll get myself like a 43% bourbon, like an Evan Williams. I'll pour my 2 ounces, but I'll put 2 ice cubes in because I
Mhm.
want it to kind of like, I want to drink it for quite a while. Or
Yeah,
like last night during the Rams game, ounce and a half of Evan Williams, bottled and bond, which is 50%. I put that in a ginger ale, sipped on that for quite a while, and that was only like 1.4 drinks,
yeah.
1.4 units or something like that. Yeah, tonight I've got tea.
Nice
What
mug
do I
there.
Yeah, you like that? It's a glazed lemon loaf tea.
There you go.
It's actually really good. It's not sweet. I mean, it tastes sweet, but it doesn't have any sugar in it. It's from Tazo or whatever it is. But yeah, I got a cholesterol check tomorrow because I'm an old man, so I got to keep doing those. And so that's in the morning. And I've noticed, and I've done some reading up on it. If you have alcohol the night before a cholesterol check, and it's also a full like CBC panel and everything,
Mhm.
it definitely could up your blood sugar levels.
Oh, interesting.
So when you take your test in the morning, but also can throw off the cholesterol check
Right.
just a little bit. So I thought, let me be good tonight, and I'm just going to drink tea and water. I'll probably have more tea as the night goes on because I'm a
Sure.
boring old man. But yeah, but tomorrow night I'll get back to
There you go. All right. So the way that we're going to end this show is we were going to do kind of like our most disappointing and our most giantsy players of the season. I don't want to do the disappoint. We've bagged on these guys, and
Yeah.
bagged is hard. I think we've been fair in our criticism, but I want to end this in a fun way, in a positive way, and we'll save some of our other lists for next week because we'll be able to do more of this as the season ends. I want your top three, and I'm thinking of like the McCovey Award type of
Yeah.
players, like your inspiration, your guys who had just been like throughout this 162, or I think right now we're at like 150 some odd games. These guys, like they just played their butts off, and they were so fun to watch. And I'm gonna do. We each have different lists,
Mhm.
but we'll do like a 3, a 2, and then a 1. I'm guessing we're probably gonna have the same player for number 1. But do you want me to start, or do you want to start?
Oh, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so I'm gonna start with number 3. This guy, he's been trying to pitch through some injuries. He's hobbling around on a bad hip, and I got to see this guy live and in color pitch a fantastic game where he almost got a no hitter, 8 2/3 innings, and he finally gave it up. And that person is Alex Cobb. That is my number 3 for my giantsy player of this year.
I like that. He was going to be on my list. I'm going to go pitcher also to start with. And my most giantsy pitcher, it was kind of a toss up, but I'm going to go. And I've talked about this guy earlier too. I've talked about him in the last couple of weeks. I think I might have a man crush. I don't know if it's on the flow or not, but Sean Manaea has really kind of come around, and he's the guy I was hoping we would get
Yeah.
when we signed him to the 2-year deal, because his velocity was up and things were getting a little bit better for him. But for Sean Manaea to fight through everything he had to at the beginning of the season and to become that dude in the second half, that we're even looking now at possibly, if he opts in, to say this guy could be in our rotation and can go 6 and 7 innings next season. For him to make that turnaround, he's number 3 on my giantsy players list.
All right, so number 2, and look, Manaea's numbers when it comes to the end of the season, they're not going to be fantastic, but
Right.
he has improved upon them, and he has been in a role that has been unpredictable. Like, some players like that consistency, they like that predictability of what they do, and sometimes they don't get that, and you hear about it. I haven't really
Yeah.
heard about it from Manaea, so
And he kept his head down. He kept his head down and just did his thing. I mean, when you look at his August ERA was 3.15 in 20 innings pitched, and his September ERA so far is 2.57 in 21 innings pitched. So I mean, like I said, he's really just kind of put his head down, done his thing, and given the Giants everything he's got.
And what we hope is that if he opts in, which we think he's going to do, he does the same thing that he did last year, which was remember when we signed him, the first quote that was kind of an eye opener was, usually I don't work very hard in the off season. And this year I finally, and so let's hope that is going to be his creed this offseason as well.
Got some motivation.
All right, my number 2 guy is somebody who has been on this team for several years now. He's never going to be, you never want this guy to be your best player. And it's not because he's not good enough. It's just, if he's your 3rd or 4th best hitter, you have a really good baseball team. Unfortunately for this team, he's been their best hitter all season long, and that is Wilmer Flores. Wilmer Flores in 393 ABs, and he was not playing every day earlier in the season. He is hitting 285 with the 356 OBP, 22 jacks, 57 RBI, and he is slugging over 500. I'm going to guess he's the only Giants player who is slugging over 500. And I just think he's been great. Like, if he is your best player, you probably didn't have that great of a team, but it has just been fun watching him just rip left-handed pitching into the seats. Like, that's just what he does. And so I don't want to speak. I feel like I'm kind of being a little negative on it, but I just think he's been fantastic in what he's been above what we expect him to do. And even though, defensively, he's had to play a little bit more than we've probably wanted him to, but that has just kind of been the case with this team. When you have all of these players who you just play them all around, and, their Giants are making so many moves every game. Sometimes defensively, especially at the end of the game, you're left with guys that you don't necessarily want to see defensively, but just offensively, he's been tremendous.
And that's where the roster has to build next year. Is you got to look at it and say, can we keep Wilmer in the DH spot? Is that a guy we can DH the entire game, not have to take him out, not have to make moves where we have to see him in the field? Do we have guys who could play the infield and do different things? So that's kind of where they have to go. I'm going to go another pitcher with my number 2 because I love when this guy throws. I love his slider. I want to see him in the back end of the bullpen next season. I want to see him as your 7th or 8th inning guy, and that's Ryan Walker, kind of thrust into the bullpen midway through the season out of necessity. They really needed an arm. Rookie, 57 and a third innings pitched, 73 strikeouts. Got to bring the walks down. He's got 22 walks and 57 and a third, 58 hits as well, 7 home runs. But, almost a 3 ERA, 3.14. He's one of those guys, though, that, he was put in a role that it's not necessarily what he wanted to do. Didn't want to be the opener, but he embraced the role. And to have a guy like that you can look at next season and go, man, could we get him back with Camilo Duvall? Could he possibly be your closer as well? I mean, if he's throwing that nasty slider and he can control that thing and get in there and go 1, 2, 3, could he possibly also help you out in the closing role next season? He's my number 2, the great rookie Ryan Walker.
Yeah, and he was way better earlier in the season. I'm sure he got a little tired,
out of gas.
He's pitched upwards of 50 innings in the minors in a season before, but pitching in the minors and pitching against major league hitting, I'm sure, is a little bit harder on the arm for that. Okay, my number 1 is Logan Webb. The thing about Logan Webb, and the thing that I worry about a little bit, if he's your ace, he's a sinker ball pitcher, and he's going to give up contact. That is kind of his job, is to make sure that people put the ball on the ground. They need to invest in defense. They really, really need to invest in an infield defense, because if he is your ace, your defense is going to have to play well behind him. Now, there are a couple things that I really liked about his season. We remember last year in the offseason, Zaidi was saying how, we want him to strike out more batters. Like, we want him to miss more bats. Now, he didn't get up to his 2021 strikeouts per 9, which was almost 10, but he did improve by half of a strikeout per 9. He went from 7.6 last year to 8.1 this year. But the other thing that he did tremendously well, he cut down his walks per 9 from 2.3 to 1.3. So he had 6.26 strikes per walk, which is by far the highest in his career. And he's gonna give up hits, which is the other thing. Yesterday, when he had that complete game, he gave up 9 hits in 9 innings. So it's not like, he was striking everybody. This wasn't a Doc Gooden in his prime complete game, but he's going to give up a few hits here and there. They're going to put the bat on the ball, but he's going to battle. He's going to attack these guys, and you're going to see lots of pop-ups, and you're going to see lots of called third strikes, because he's just constantly attacking. And, part of what Baggerly wrote, one way, if you're Zaidi and you want to tell this guy, hey man, we got your back, not only are we going to improve this offense, but we're going to make sure that this defense is solid behind you. We know Casey Schmidt defensively is going to be a much better player. He's probably not going to hit, but maybe he does get to play 7, 8, 9 a little bit more. Maybe whoever replaces Crawford, whether it's Luciano or Fitzgerald, or they find somebody else not named Paul DeJong, that Paul had a rough time here in San Francisco. But first base, maybe Wade isn't the guy. Wade struggled with his defense this year. I think he may have had the most errors of a first baseman. Maybe he's better in the outfield. So that's something that they have to look at, though, because this guy is going to cause players to hit the ball on the ground, and you got to be able to field the baseball behind him, because 11 and 13 off of the numbers that he put up were kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure. And I love Logan Webb. We've got him for a long time. I like that he speaks his mind too. I mean, you've got to have that on a team, especially if you're struggling, especially if you were expected to be in the playoffs just 6 weeks ago, and not even 6 weeks, maybe like 4 weeks ago. And all of a sudden you start falling off and things happen. You got to be able to be a team leader. So Logan Webb could be that Buster Posey guy that walks around the clubhouse and says, hey, this is how it's going to be here going forward.
Yes.
My number one may surprise you, and one of my favorite players on the team, the one dude that I'd like to sit down and have a beer with. I don't know if he'd have much to say. I think knowing me and kind of what I've seen from him, I would do most of the talking, but it would be a cool hang. And my most Giantsy player this season, my Willie Mack dude, and I think he's already won the award, is Lamont Wade Jr.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of my favorite players on the team, and mainly because he was told, like, hey, first base is yours. It's yours to have. We just got some late news. Kyle Harrison was scratched, and Brebbia is going to get the start.
Oh gosh.
And then Alex Wood is going to get the bulk of the innings after that. So
I'm sure he's happy about that.
Yeah, so there you have it. So Lamont Wade Jr. Kind of put into that role at first base, took over for Brandon Belt, and he's done a serviceable job at first base. Not awful. He's had his growing pains there, and I'm sure
made a good play last night to save that game.
Absolutely. Nice throw. I mean, the throw wasn't fantastic. Patrick Bailey made a good play on it and brought the ball down.
Essentially blocked the play.
He just threw his foot out there and got the runner to slide and basically hit his hand.
Yeah.
Or hit his foot. And I like the fact too that Lamont Wade Jr. was healthy this season, went back to who he was When you look at the numbers, we expect Lamont Wade Jr. to get on base quite a bit, 74 walks and 95 strikeouts. Power has been coming around a little bit more towards the end of the season here. 17 home runs, 45 ribs. He hits at the top of the order, 63 runs scored. That's the most on the team. Just one of those guys that I want him to stick around for a while. I want him to be with the Giants for a while. But like you had said, like in a Wilmer Flores situation, I want Lamont Wade Jr. to be like our 5th best hitter. I don't want him to be in our top 3 because then that means we're struggling and having a little bit of a tough time. So let's add to this lineup. Let's deepen this lineup and get Lamont Wade Jr. hitting 2nd or 7th, maybe not near the top or not 3, 4, 5 somewhere in there, but my most Giantsy Willie Mack San Francisco Giant of 2023 has to be Lamont Wade Jr. Always fun to watch too. His at bats are always very good. He's got such a fantastic eye.
I mean, he was earlier in the season. He was upwards of, above 400 with his on base, and it kind of came down a little bit, but still, 377 on base for the year so far. That's good. You live with that. And
absolutely. And he can build on that too. I mean, he's young enough. He can build on that next season, stay healthy, and everything could look really good for him next year.
All right. We will be back next week to wrap up this season. We're not going to sit here and we're not going to feel sorry for ourselves as fans. And we're not going to go, fire this person and fire that person. Woe is us. We are just not that kind of podcast. So we're going to find some of the positivity. Will be critical when we need to be critical, but the off season this is going to be the most important off season for this regime. And the thing that I didn't even mention, which was also kind of late information, was Ken Rosenthal. He had his top 5 for Shohei. His top 2 are the Dodgers and the Mets, and then the 3 dark horses, which he said, do not give up on these teams: Giants, Rangers, and Mariners. So we're still on that list. I like being on that list.
Yeah, and
I would
be
really sad if we were not on that list.
We've got a lot of money to throw around. We've got a good city, and we've got a situation where we could make it. I mean, he's obviously not going to pitch next season, but you could make it so that in 2025, when he does come back to pitch, you're not overloading the guy, because that's the Giants' philosophy. So if you still have Kapler and Zadie around, that's kind of the way you can.
You want to pack that ballpark, grab Ohtani.
Oh, grab him. Yeah. And I'm not going to be here next week. I am in Anaheim and Disneyland. So just as a reminder for everybody there.
Yeah. And I'll either find someone to do this show with, or maybe what I might actually do is a couple of solo shows just to kind of get through some of the news and all that stuff. That is also possible, but we'll have content for next week. All right. For Brad, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.
Peace.